Imagine a world where the government uses its citizens as unwitting test subjects, and then pretend that that's real life. Now imagine that this manipulation and this altering of behavior at the hand of the government is done in the name of national security. This is not a plot of a dystopian novel or a Hollywood thriller. It is the chilling reality that has unfolded and maybe is continuing to unfold in our backyard. The backyard against... But like horrifying.
I was given a glass of Kool-Aid, and so were the other children. This Kool-Aid was spiked with LSD.
Today's video is about MK Ultra, the CIA's top secret mind control program that actually happened. 110%. This is not speculation, it happened. Thank you to Fume for sponsoring this episode. Have you ever wondered what it'd be like to break your bad habits with ease and beauty and class? Well, today's sponsor, Fume, is going to be helping you. Okay, my bro? Find a better alternative for your bad habit with Fume. Meet Fume, the leader in the flavored air movement. It is a fresh new way to move towards better health, better habits. Fume is not a vape. There's no vapor. There's no nicotine. There's no batteries. It looks beautiful. You can twist it. It clicks. It's cool. It's got replaceable cartridges. I have like 6 of them. Cinnamon. Delicious. You can enjoy it anywhere, guilt-free. There are non-toxic flavors, a bunch to choose from, like crisp mint and orange vanilla. My personal favorite is black pepper, maple black pepper. It's designed to fidget with, it's weighted, it feels great. Plus it's backed by doctors in the US, ensuring that it is safe and reliable. There's a few different options to choose from. You can choose the original or the Solano. For those of you who enjoy dark mode on your browser, that's the one that I use. You can also get this cool Fume base, and if you've used my code before, you might have gotten one for free, but now, for a limited time, you can use code OOMPAVILLE to get a free topper. It is the perfect accessory for your Fume device, making it softer and warmer on the mouth. Go to tryfume.com and use code OOMPAVILLE or scan the QR code on screen right now to get your free topper when you order your journey pack. Join the over 300,000 satisfied Fume customers and be our next success story. Go, puff on a Fume, bud.
In the early days of the Cold War, the CIA ordered the creation of a secret program intended to find ways of mind control. They funded an army of psychiatric institutions across the United States and Canada to perform experiments on unsuspecting patients using psychedelic drugs, sensory deprivation, electroshock treatment, and more. The program was known by its codename, MK Ultra.
There were covert experiments in the 1950s that resulted in shocking revelations that still haunt us to this day. Today, we're gonna be uncovering the sinister truth behind the agency's attempts to control the human's mind.
A government-funded cadre of mad scientists bent on using drugs, sex, and torture to control human minds.
Not the human's mind, the human mind. Not one guy.
One intelligence agency tried to peel this man's mind back to reveal its deepest secrets.
I've lived through it. I've lived through it.
This man worked on some of these programs. He would write of his work, "It was fun, fun, fun."
So my big question always is, could these experiments still be happening, hidden in the shadows of modern America? I'd like to think probably not, but at the same time, I have a smooth brain. And the reason that I'm a fence sitter is because I have a cognitive bias geared towards a distrust of authority, which prevents me from engaging in pathological belief, but it is still not exactly a fully productive way to be. So anyways, on this channel, we have fairly extensively covered the CIA and United States government's sketchy antics around the world, whether it's uprooting communist presidents and leaders or going to any length possible to maintain the image of America on a global stage. The Cold War, we've got Paul Bunyan. You know who Paul Bunyan is? Go watch the Cold War video. It's crazy. Call Paul Onion. More brain juice. As time goes on, secret stuff eventually becomes declassified, and one of the craziest things that has been declassified and confirmed is the declassification of the MK Ultra project.
MK Ultra was an umbrella project under which a broad spectrum of sensitive activities was financed. Some of these activities dealt with research into behavioral modification, primarily by means of drugs and hypnosis, involving tests on human volunteers and, in some cases, on unwitting subjects. End quote.
Mind Control Ultra, a project that began in 1953 that was conducted by the CIA to create and control minds using drugs or therapies, interventions. It's an insane concept that, if was proven to be completely true, could reshape the world entirely and change world history from that point on.
I was a subject in radiation as well as mind control and drug experiments performed by a man I knew as Dr. Green.
And I guess if it did work, we really wouldn't know, and we'd be the victims of it, because it would be a, psyop, kind of one of those things. I'm not sure. But due to recent events, MK Ultra is being brought back into the mainstream, and many people are beginning to believe that it is in fact real and also continuing and ongoing, and mind control with a K is a legitimate thing still actively being done by the CIA.
My opinion is, let me just put it this way. I think they did these programs back then to use on us now. And I think we are seeing it full-fledged. I think we potentially have even seen this with other shooting events that have happened. I'm not even going to go into those shooting events. You can think in your mind, imagine what I might be talking about.
What do you guys think? What do you guys think? By the way, I'm not suicidal. Just kidding. Oh, man, I'm not. I don't need to say that, though. There's no, this is all public information. I'm not a whistleblower or anything like this. We live in a country with a pretty awesome constitution that I like. And, I can talk about this. Frick you, CIA guys.
Brought to you courtesy of the red, white, and blue.
See, I'm allowed to get away with it too. I got away with it. I just got away with that. Isn't that crazy? So did the intended result of the MK Ultra project come to fruition? Are there mind control drugs? Well, let's go find out.
Dempsey once told me that LMG stood for lick my giblets.
Entering World War II, the Second Great War, nations worldwide sought ways to stay on top of their enemies. We've covered a little bit of this in the past. In the 1940s, the Nazis had been using their concentration camps as a place to conduct all sorts of insane experiments. And similarly to the idea that all roads lead to Rome, all evil shit in the modern day leads back to the Nazis. Okay? It seems like one of these insane human experiments that the Nazis underwent is the experiments to try and create mind control drugs and truth serums. AKA me when I'm on a first date. It's like I've taken a truth serum. I start sharing weird things that I should wait to share. It's how I got Christina, though.
Oh God, please, Lord Jesus, save me.
Now, while it is believed that the Nazis never really produced anything of value in regard to this, it is believed that the CIA continued the work of the Nazis in Project MK Ultra. In my personal opinion, I think that the Nazis did produce valuable work in regard to what the CIA was looking for, and that's why they continued the work. They probably saw something compelling and worth investing a bunch of money into and risking human lives. Or maybe they just didn't. I don't know. What do you guys think? To understand where this potentially could have gone, we must understand Operation Paperclip, which was a program that went on from 1945 to 1959 that allowed Nazi scientists, engineers, and former leaders that were war criminals, basically, to be employed by the United States government.
Operation Paperclip was all about getting the top minds in Nazi Germany. All the top scientists, developers, intelligence specialists, and engineers before the Soviets did.
Basically, they took a plea deal that got them freedom, and they were called paperclips, and they contributed to the nuclear field, any field that you can think of, NASA, space, any cutting edge thing, Nazis, yeah, pretty much, in America at least. Just after the end of World War II, the United States began to work on Project Chatter, which is considered to be a precursor to Project MK Ultra. Chatter was started by the United States Navy and conducted in Bethesda, Maryland, and this was from the year 1947 until the year 1953. The purpose of Project Chatter was to test LSD on patients to see if it could be used as an actual drug with valuable non-recreational side effects. But I don't really know if people were using LSD recreationally in 1950. To be honest, I'm getting hot. The Project Chatter studies concluded with patients experiencing anxiety and euphoria. Some patients recovered to their normal state and had some improved awareness. However, 4 experienced adverse effects. Oh my gosh, really? I would have never guessed. So with Project Chatter ending so well, the next step for the United States government was Project Artichoke, the most worthless fruit or whatever the that thing is in the world, in my opinion.
Project Artichoke arose from Project Bluebird and eventually transformed into the more well-known Project MK Ultra. Over the course of this project's lifetime, it addressed several disturbing questions.
The entire purpose of this project was to see if the United States government could administer an array of drugs to coerce someone into assassinating someone. That sounds somewhat topical. And what the
MK Ultra's predecessor, Project Artichoke, began in the early 1950s. The broad goal of the project was perfectly outlined by one memo from 1952 which said, "Can we get control of an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will and even against fundamental laws of nature, such as self-preservation?"
Are you sure? We did that? Are you sure that Project Artichoke did? Are you sure? That was an actual thing? That's kind of a crazy thing to do. That's like declassified and stuff? That's a crazy thing to declassify. Involuntary assassination of someone. What a bizarre thing to spend money on. Program Artichoke would begin in 1951 and conclude in 1953 at the start of MK Ultra. The drugs that were administered included heroin, cocaine, weed, peyote, which is a psychedelic cactus, mescaline, which is a drug similar to LSD, and also scopolamine was another, I think. Eventually, the fellers involved in the MK Ultra project began to administer LSD to their own agents within the CIA. For example, one agent was administered LSD for 77 days in a row. Did he live or did he die? I'm gonna say that he died. I wanna talk to that guy, but he's probably dead. Just kidding, that's libelous slander. I don't want to get sued by the Eisenhower administration. Anyways, the results of the project caused many of its patients to experience amnesia and memory loss, amongst other things, probably like premature death, or maybe a successful assassination of someone under the influence of mind control, maybe. I don't know. So after numerous experiments, the CIA was going strong with MK Ultra in 1953 and began once again to experiment with the effects of LSD to see if it could be used to control human minds.
You just did the most acid I've ever seen anybody eat in my life.
A little bit of information on LSD. What exactly were the Swiss doing during World War II? They're kind of known as being the fence sitters, the neutral party. Well, they were making LSD in a Swiss laboratory. And ever since they did that, the CIA really liked the effects of LSD and how it changed people. And they loved the drug so much that at the beginning of MK Ultra, the United States government tried to buy 22 pounds of LSD, which would be equivalent to 100 million effective doses. Huh? That's weird. They did this to control the international supply of the drug. Another thing that we love to do. I think, I heard at least, that's alleged. One of the main objectives of the project was to find out if the drugs could be administered to Soviet spies and make them defect from the USSR. That actually kind of makes sense. To find out if this was true and possible, the CIA began to experiment on both Americans and Canadians. You know, perfect analogs to Soviet operatives. In America, the CIA would give LSD to prisoners, people with a mental health condition, prostitutes, aliens, I think they called them, like aliens, sex aliens, what do they call prostitutes, people of ill repute? They also administered it to drug addicts, and it seemed like the reason that they did that is so that people couldn't really fight back. They chose people of low social standing to be able to get away with their evil, inhumane, unethical treatment of them. Another example of people of low social standing that the CIA also administered the drug to was CIA agents.
Boom. Roasted.
Also, military personnel and doctors, they administered it to them as well, and they told them they were not allowed to talk about it and its effects. Obviously, it's to be maintained as a secret. For a little ironic twist, talking about Operation Paperclip and these freaks being able to escape the Nuremberg trials, in some instances in which the drugs were administered in this CIA MK Ultra project, the drugs were unknowingly, involuntarily administered. And this is a direct violation of the Nuremberg Code signed by the United States post-World War II. So, I don't know what that means, but it's probably not good. The first thing written in the permissible medical experiments section of the Nuremberg Code is that voluntary consent of human subjects is essential, you know, because they're humans. Furthermore, the CIA would conduct Operation Midnight Climax to see the effects of LSD further. These loved LSD. During Midnight Climax, the CIA set up brothels in San Francisco where they hired prostitutes to lure in non-consenting individuals, administer LSD to them, then feed them messages about robbery, assault, and assassination to try and mind control them. How insane is that? And while this was happening, CIA agents wrote down the experiment's results through a one-way mirror in the room. So, like, so many violations of human rights. I love this dude. That's so crazy. Why is that a thing? Other experiments included bribing heroin addicts with more heroin if they agreed to take LSD. And spiking random CIA employees and military personnel with LSD. One CIA scientist, a fella that went by the name of Frank Olson, was spiked with LSD and subsequently jumped from a 13th story window of a New York City hotel room. The reason that Olson was drugged was because he was questioning the morality of Project MK Ultra a couple days before, allegedly. I don't want to get sued by the Eisenhower administration or whatever. I don't know. This is a long time ago. It's a different CIA, guys. It's different people. In Canada, the CIA hired Scottish psychiatrist Donald Ewan Cameron to conduct the Montreal experiments at the Allen Memorial Institute, which was a psychiatric hospital located at McGill University. There it is on a map. How funny does that look? Just kidding, it looks pretty normal. I like it. I want to go there. Ewan was a respected medical professional who sat on the Nuremberg Medical Tribunal in 1946 and 1947. At the time of his hiring, Ewan had developed the psychic driving concept.
You would basically put somebody to sleep with drugs for many, many, many days, give them massive doses of electric shock therapy, literally hundreds of times the normal dosage, and basically you would reduce the person literally to a vegetable. And the idea clinically was you would wipe out either delusions or depression or psychiatric symptoms, and then when the person came back to their normal self, which would take months and months and months, the psychiatric symptoms would be gone.
This concept essentially involved playing continuous audio loops on repeat to see how patients would be affected. The CIA was interested in this original concept because they wanted to find a way to correct schizophrenia, allegedly, and they believed that the psychic driving concept could potentially do that, and also potentially make people kill people, or make them not be spies anymore for our enemies. The Montreal experiments would add a slight twist to Ewan's concept. He would not only play the looping tapes, but he would also administer LSD, various psychedelics, and shock therapy to his patients. They would be in a drug-induced coma for weeks, all while having the same audio loops playing. They were just conscious enough to hear the audio, and this had some absolutely insane effects. The patients experienced severe depression, various anxiety disorders, urinary incontinence, which means they piss themselves, amnesia, forgetting how to talk, and just forgetting shit in general. You know, imagine forgetting how to talk. You wake up, you're hanging out with Dr. Ewan, and you got a little grant from the CIA, and we just got $50,000, and you're his lab partner, and he's like, yeah, we'll do some testing. It'll be this really cool thing. We'll stay in here for a couple weeks, and we'll get a bunch of money. It's like a sleep test for sleep apnea. You lay under there, and then you wake up after being administered massive doses of psychedelic shock therapy and LSD, and you forget how to talk. You go, me when I'm a victim of MK Ultra in the Montreal experiment and I forget how to talk. All right, guys, that would suck. The results of Ewan's experiments made him exceptionally well respected, contrary to how you might have guessed that would go. So much so that he was the first chairman of the World Psychiatric Association and president of both the American Psychiatric Association and the Canadian Psychiatric Association. Very well respected, reputable brands, I guess, in the mental health world. This guy tortured mentally ill people and then was heralded as a hero for his work. Genius! That's a devious lick, as the kids would say, I think. Pretty crazy shit. Anyways, other substances that were studied in MK Ultra included alcohol, heroin, morphine, temazepam, which is a strong insomnia medicine, mescaline, which I already mentioned, psilocybin, which is a psychedelic compound produced by mushrooms, scopolamine, which I also already mentioned, and is a potent compound used in anti-nausea medicine and can also be synthesized fairly easily, which is crazy. It's that suggestive drug. People in South America, they put it on like a book and they will lift the book up and, or like a pamphlet. They'll knock on your door, you open the door, and then they go, and then it gets in your face, and then you become suggestible, and you let them in, and then you let them steal all your stuff. You let them use your KitchenAid. What the? You make cookies! Also, sodium pentothal, which is an anesthetic component. Additionally, the CIA tried hypnosis and studied the relationship of personality to susceptibility to hypnosis.
Hey there, our first Martian. What's your first impression of the planet Earth here?
I've been hypnotized many times. I tried it for a while because I had such crippling anxiety, and I feel like it did help a bit, but it's very relaxing and almost meditative, or it is certainly meditative, but it doesn't change anything at all. I'm just not susceptible, I guess. My personality type is that I'm one with our savior. The CIA also created multiple detention camps in Japan, West Germany, and the Philippines as a way to avoid criminal prosecution and still undergo these projects. All subjects at these camps, though, of course, would be suspected communists, and they'd be brutally interrogated and lightly tortured.
Allegedly.
Using all the methods that we have previously discussed. So, torture kind of was something a little different in the 1950s. So this shit went on for a very long time. And finally, in 1973, when Watergate became public, Project MK Ultra was halted. In 1973, the year my father was born, the director of the CIA, Richard Helms, ordered that all of MK Ultra's documents be destroyed. However, Helms was unaware that some 20,000 documents were saved, and that is how we know of these experiments today. But he also wanted them all destroyed. So what was destroyed and what else was there? And this is crazy. In 1974, the New York Times would allege that the CIA had conducted experiments on the US population in the 1960s. In 1977, the US Senate held a hearing on the 20,000 documents discovered in a financial records building. These are all MK Ultra documents that were discovered in an financial records building. This would fortunately be the end of MK Ultra, but given the fact that the director of the CIA can just say, hey, destroy all this stuff, and we only know about it because it wasn't done properly, makes me think that there might be some missing pieces to this.
Allegedly.
To this day, in case you're wondering, some families are still receiving reparations based on their family members' victimization and unknowing participation in MK Ultra, a mind control experiment perpetrated by the United States government. I'd say that MK Ultra is probably one of the craziest experiments ever conducted by the United States, and this was all in an attempt to find a way to force people to perform assassinations, cure schizophrenia, and push the effects of LSD to the limits and other psychedelics and drugs that control the mind.
That's the most badass thing I've ever heard.
Now, with all that said, just because the project concluded doesn't mean the effects of the experiments have stopped and that similar projects aren't currently being done. You know what I'm saying? Do I get that feeling, or is that just me? I mean, there are like 7 different branches of the CIA that we don't even know the name of. And there are about 4 that we know the name of or the acronym, but don't know what that stands for. That's scariest.
I refuse to live like this! Office grenade!
In modern America, it seems like MK Ultra is consistently brought up more and more and more every single day as crazy political events and even different figures enter the mainstream. Some examples of this, some you might be familiar with, some less familiar with. In the modern day, once again, where we live, that's where you live. Hello, modern day American guy. How are you doing? Please press the like button. Go to sour.gg and buy some candy today. We've got 52 weeks and 52 new flavors of Sour Boys licorice we make in-house. Not to mention Project Lil Guys that we have in stock all the time and we'll be releasing new flavors of very soon.
All the flavors are good. I don't know which one I like the best, but I would definitely buy these again. These are $5.99 a piece.
Go to sour.gg and sign up for the Gump Club to get percentages off and free shipping, and also just support the channel. This is a brand I love to work with because it's mine. And my friends and family make it, and I love it, and it's awesome. But also, it's just candy, and also, I apologize if you can't get each flavor of the week. We're trying to figure that out, all right? We want to have like an end-of-the-month box or something with all the flavors that you guys can get instead of having to make purchases every single week. But we're trying to figure it out. So, the legend of MK Ultra still permeates the culture sphere we're in today, guys. For example, one of the main influences behind the extremely popular show created by the Duffer Brothers, Stranger Things, was MK Ultra. Believe it or not, since MK Ultra was a government program that ran for 20 years across many institutions in the United States, if you're writing a show, it's easy to say that a facility in your fictional universe was just one such location. And that is exactly what the Duffer Brothers did with the Hawkins lab in the show, run under the supervision of Dr. Brenner. This is not real, this is fictional, but it's like tying into real life. 11, the main character of the show, I'm pretty sure the person played by Millie Bobby Brown was a product of MK Ultra experimentation on her mother, Terry Ives, while pregnant. AKA number 10. Bazinga! Terry's extensive use of LSD and psychedelic drugs during her time in the experiment is what gave her daughter Jane, aka 11, her powers. The Duffer Brothers were going to try to create a bit more separation between the real events and their fictionalized events related to MK Ultra by calling the program Indigo at the Hawkins lab, but that never actually ended up happening, and now the only reference to Indigo is in the prequel book to the actual series, Stranger Things Suspicious Minds, which is all about Terry Ives and Dr. Brenner before the monsters and the events of Stanjo Pink. Now, it is interesting to see how MK Ultra has influenced the media, like the real life actual things that happen have created these, relatively good TV shows and created these fictionalized versions of events and conspiracies surrounding MK Ultras. And in spite of that, taking kind of precedence now over real life stuff, MK Ultra theories continue to develop and spread on the internet. Non-fictionalized things. Even though the fictionalized stuff is kind of taking head, it's kind of cool to talk about MK Ultra now. Put it in your game. Put it in your movie. Oh, you got a crazy person with a dark, disturbing past that's somehow connected to the government, and the government is involved. Let's just make it mind control. Let's just do that. Government them up, and then now they're the good guys in the new season. What? That's nonsense.
Somebody had to do it. I am the chosen one.
Now, take this next one with a grain of salt. All right, this is very conspiratorial, but people are saying that the recent thing that happened with that guy, that presidential candidate, may be a result of some kind of MK Ultra type platform. This is what people on the internet actually believe. Do I believe this? I do not believe this. I think this is genuinely insane. And that's because I think that there would probably be some evidence of it. And just because something has happened in the past doesn't mean it's going to happen again always. Obviously, even though my brain would like that to be the case, that's not true. I like to think critically as well. Back to the conspiracy, there are already conspiracy podcasts putting out episodes theorizing whether or not the shooter, Poopy Fart, was a Patsy or an MK Ultra experimentee, theorizing that he could have been influenced or directed by the CIA or another intelligence agency. And they talk about this in their podcast. Oh my God. It's awesome, man. They just go right into it. Do I believe that? No, I do not believe that. I do not believe that. I don't want that to be a thing. I don't want that. I have respect for the government. I have respect for these agencies at this point. I'm glad that all this stuff has come out because now we can hold them to at least some standard of transparency. And also, I have to say this. Not anything. I was just saying I have to say that. I have to talk like that, obviously. I mean, these guys get right into it on this podcast. If you want some real crazy conspiracy shit, holy investigate Earth. What the In part 2 of our series on the attempted assassination of President Donald Trump, we delve deeper into the background of Poopy Fart. Was he a lone gunman or a MK Ultra experimentee? I mean, that's like some pretty bold shit to claim there. That's pretty crazy, You don't want to be sued for libel from the Biden administration. Minnesota! I've already been sued by the Eisenhower administration. It was not pretty, man. My errors and omissions insurance barely covered events over 70 years. I just now realized that I shouldn't have said that guy's name, so his name will now be replaced with Poopy Fart. I don't want him to be immortalized in my video. So, Poopy Fart, the guy that tried to and failed to shoot the former president of the United States of America. To be clear, I think this podcast is fairly biased, and that's respectfully, I think they're fairly biased a little bit. They spend the first few minutes of the episode talking about how the deep state left has tried everything that they possibly can to oust Trump legally.
You have witnessed the left, the deep state, that has been desperately trying to prosecute Donald Trump. They have been trying to put Donald Trump in prison. They have been trying to do any and everything possible to completely destroy his name, his legacy, his presidency, his accomplishments, you name it. They've done everything they possibly can do legally, and I say legally, but what they're doing is manipulating the justice system to be able to go after him. They're using their prosecutors that are far left. They're using their judges that are far left. This is what they do. And so when we have talked on this podcast for the past 4, 5, 6 years, and especially the past 4 years, about how George Soros, when he funds these prosecutors, when he funds judge campaigns or not even judge campaigns, but the actual appointees, that when they appoint judges in, this is the result of this. When you have far left judges, you have far left prosecutors. We saw it in California. We see it in Chicago. We see it in New York, where people can get away with almost murder, or at the very least violent crimes, and they were released back on the streets within hours of them committing these violent crimes. This is all at the hands of the leftist, far left judges. And I say far left, it's hard to find regular left anymore.
And how Trump is trying to save the country, and you got to keep their bias in mind when they continue to theorize that this attempt on Trump was government sponsored or agency sanctioned. I would like to believe that democracy is still a thing. And that's where I'm going to stay. I would like to believe that, and I do believe that.
And listen, guys, we've talked about this so many times on this podcast. I mean, we've for the past 6 months, we've said, listen, if they're not going to be able to put him in prison, especially before the election, and then as they started seeing that these convictions and these prosecutions that they have done to Donald Trump, they have seen how much of a popularity gain that Trump has had. Mm-hmm. He is growing in popularity. He is gaining points. He is separating himself far from the Democrat Party in this race for presidency in 2024. And so it got to a point where we said, what are they going to do next? This is something that Tucker Carlson said. This is something that many pundits have said in the past. And I think that potentially we might have seen what they did next Saturday.
Some of the justification that they go to in the podcast is, the guy wasn't maybe directly involved, but some stuff was intentionally ignored by law enforcement or the Secret Service, that there was a ladder placed there supposedly for him.
Someone that was so politically motivated to go to a Trump rally in Pennsylvania and attempt to assassinate the president, climb on a building, by the way, a building that already had a ladder there waiting for him, apparently.
People calling out about him being armed long before he took the shot.
And probably 30 seconds to a minute, everyone around, there's all these videos coming out showing that they were pointing the camera at the building and screaming at law enforcement saying, hey, there's a guy with a gun on the roof. There is a guy with a gun on the roof. And then there was like all these people was like, hey, there's a guy with a gun on what the hell are you doing?
And even allegedly that law enforcement had climbed the ladder, saw the shooter on the roof, and climbed back down, choosing not to do anything.
So then we find out that local law enforcement a local law enforcement officer climbed up apparently the same ladder that the dude had put up there. I'm assuming that's the only way he would have probably climbed up there. Climbed up before the shooting ever happened, locked eyes with the gunman, crawled back down because he saw he had a gun and just like, oh, peace out.
Was he figuring he was like special somebody?
I have no idea. We don't know. But at the very least, we know that a local law enforcement officer climbed up the ladder, looked at him, locked eyes, came back down the ladder, and we don't know whatever happened with that.
So I don't know if that's active involvement or just gross idiot negligence. You guys are free to speculate, but now the Secret Service seems to be beefing with local law enforcement over who is at fault. Seems valid because it seems somebody's definitely at fault there. There was a lot of balls dropped. There's even a video of them saying the man's poopy fart's last name. You can hear a woman going, poopy fart, poopy fart, poopy fart. But it's not actually Poopy Fart. It's his last name. Part of the conspiracy theory suggests that the head of the Secret Service, Kimberly Cheadle, has been biased towards Biden since he appointed her.
I wonder, especially considering the head of Secret Service is appointed by Joe Biden. She was appointed by Joe Biden in, I think, 2022. I could be wrong, 2021, 2022. And so if you don't think agencies are biased,
oh,
for a certain president,
they are.
So,
and just like judges and prosecutors, depending on who appointed them.
And what the podcast uses as evidence is that stuff like this can happen and agency heads can turn on presidents. And that's what happened in movies like White House Down and Olympus Has Fallen. So, take that with a huge chunk of salt.
When you have an agency that's a government agency, you can't always trust them.
Oh, absolutely not, especially when the heads of the agencies are appointed by the presidents. And the time that we're living in, you can't just think like you used to think about Secret Service agents, right? But there have been movies where it showed Secret Service agents and especially some of the higher ups in Secret Service agents that were compromised, that literally led assassination attempts or these massive ploys. I mean, I think even White House Down potentially was that as well. White House Down, Olympus Has Fallen.
Yes.
This all depicts this.
Or not, because I'm certainly convinced that when you use a fictional, terrible movie starring the guy who was Magic Mike and was a puppy sub in This Is the End and Leonidas in 300, you're really barking up the truth tree. And by God, that truth tree's got some knots and holes, and once you stick your penis in, it's hard to get it out. The claim is that the Secret Service couldn't fail that badly unless it were an inside job. But we all know that people are stupid, so that's also very possible.
And the way that this looks right now, it looks like there was some kind of involvement, some kind of government involvement. Something happened, something failed, and I just don't think the Secret Service can fail that bad without it being something What's the word?
Some type of inside job.
Yeah.
These guys then play a Watch Mojo video on MK Ultra and then discuss the possibility that MK Ultra was a program that could have been responsible for the Trump assassination attempt.
The reason why we wanted to play that is because if you start thinking about how would the CIA or the government use someone like Thomas Matthew Crooks to their ability, to their willingness to assassinate a president without them themselves assassinating a president. Now, you also have to remember that, you know, for example, Lee Harvey Oswald, was he also a part of a program like MK Ultra or MK Ultra itself?
As well as the JFK assassination attempt at the hand of Lee Harvey Oswald, which I'm more akin to believing that one with the research and evidence, I guess, the director of the CIA at that time. I don't know. I still don't believe that wholeheartedly, but I definitely believe that that was some kind of perpetration by the United States government. And I wish that they would just fully release the JFK files so I could either eliminate my bias entirely through facts and logic and seeing the truth, but they won't do that. So it's like, why don't you just show us? Why do you delete all the files? Do you want us to mistrust you? Because I don't want to be automatically mistrusting of authority. I wish I could trust authority. I mean, yeah, I wish I could. Always, without questions asked. And yeah, then the podcast becomes very Alex Jones pilled and starts talking about crisis actors, and I don't really want to talk about this shit anymore, but yeah, they get into brainwashing the youth, and they think the techniques are much more advanced than they were back in the 50s and 70s. They talk about drugs, talk about microwave weapons and technology that can supposedly interrupt human beings' brain function, like the 5G. I got a block of shungite right there, guys, to protect me. Yep, pretty cool. You see that shit? I used my telekinesis powers that I got from a government experiment back in 1993, 3 years before I was born. My mom. They experimented on her. These guys also talk about Havana syndrome, which is a disputed medical condition that causes chronic problems like balance and cognitive issues. And supposedly some of these symptoms are linked to Russian intelligence agencies, and they insinuate that something like Havana syndrome could be the result of weaponized brain interference to influence you to do something that you wouldn't normally do, which in this instance is to climb on a roof and try to assassinate the former president of the United States of America. Quite a jump, I've got to say. The CIA wants mind-controlled robot assassins, though.
They wanted to be able to figure out how can we get people to carry out specific actions, say such as a presidential assassination, against their will. Mind control assassins is what they wanted.
And can they create them by separating your consciousness from your anger to direct you to do things? And they say there's a lot of science and research coming out that proves this, but cite absolutely zero sources from Neuralink. Aside from Neuralink, they say Neuralink.
They wanted mind-controlled assassins. They wanted people to unwittingly know that without even knowing what they were doing. They wanted people to kind of act as robots, to where they would separate a part of their mind, which more than likely is not very hard to do, because if you can separate the part of the mind, which is your consciousness, and then activate the part of your mind, which is anger and a driven thought or process in your mind. And we know, by the way, based on a lot of science and research that we're coming out today, think about, for example, and I'm not connecting at all Elon Musk to this, but when we talk about Neuralink, to where they know the parts of the brain where you can stimulate or do these things to where you can reactivate parts of your mind. The CIA knows exactly how to activate a person's mind in a certain area to where they can shut off a certain part and activate another part, right, of their mind.
They also say that the CIA definitely knows how to shut off parts of your brain and activate parts of your brain that would allow them to influence you, like you need to be influenced in order to shoot a presidential candidate. This is crazy, like actually really off the rocker. So it's important to, you know, if you're going to go down these rabbit holes, guys, you got to do your due diligence, all right? Just believing all of this stuff is just not cool, okay? You shouldn't do that, for sure. You should think as critically as you possibly can. I'm not saying none of it's real. I'm not government pilled, but also, like, this is not healthy to believe this stuff. I can't imagine this is healthy. Facilitate a bit of distrust, but also not to the point where it's a detriment on your life and your ability to reason and exist in reality. Anyways, back to these awesome guys. They go back and talk about how he was a gamer and how it's weird how he doesn't have a social media presence that's extremely easy to access, especially since he's a gamer and internet groups are where gamers find community, especially when they're loners, who are picked on by their classmates like this guy was.
Thomas had no social media at all. He's a 20-year-old male. You think about 20-year-olds right now, they have social media everywhere. They do Snapchat, they do Instagram, they do, all these other things. The only thing they have found that he had any kind of relation to was a little bit of Discord. And that was it. That is just not typical of a 20-year-old. I don't care if you're a loner or not, because when you're a loner and you're bullied, a lot of times that's where teenagers they'll turn to is the internet and go to these like social groups where people accept you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
especially gamers.
Yeah, you're not in like the same room as them, but they accept you, online.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does that make sense? Sorry about that.
Yeah,
I did not explain that very clearly, but I'm just saying many loners turn to the internet.
Yes.
Or maybe not everyone who is a gamer who has been picked on and doesn't have a social media presence is not a suspect for a assassination. Maybe that's maybe it as well. So, do you think that there's any validity to conspiracy theories like this in the modern day? I want to know your thoughts down below. I'm relatively black-pilled on this kind of stuff, and I feel like there is, but also just pointing to a predecessor doesn't automatically make things more clear. And just because things seem like they might line up doesn't mean they do, because it just doesn't make a lot of sense overall when you get out of your very small worldview, and that is the worldview that everything the government does is a lie, which is not true. But what about Project Artichoke? Controversies like this become more and more prevalent as our political ecosystem continues to become more and more tribalized, and people just get crazy. We got people like this on the far right theorizing that it was the CIA or another intelligence agency that could have manipulated or brainwashed the shooter, or the Secret Service didn't act until the shot was taken at Trump intentionally. And on the left, there's a compilation of people saying that this was just staged or faked by Trump to look strong and attract voters.
It's a false flag.
False flag?
Yeah, false flag.
Somebody died and 2 people injured. What do you think about that?
False flag.
False flag.
I thought it was magnificently staged. It was professionally done. It almost looked real.
Wait. Staged by who?
Oh, by Mr. Trump, of course.
I think this whole thing is staged.
You think it was staged?
Yeah.
It depends on everybody's view. Yeah.
View of the assassination attempt? What do you think? Does it kind of depend on where you're standing, whether or not you agree with the assassination attempt or disagree with it?
I just don't see that being the truth, but that's I'd rather just not make any comment.
Really quick.
This is crazier, to be honest. There's even less proof of this, and this makes less logical sense. So, like, that's dumb as libtards. Take the L, all right? Forbes even put out this. Will surviving gunfire be Donald Trump's next appeal to black voters? They put that out and then immediately pulled it. Can you tell why they pulled that? Can you tell why? It's because they're stupid and incredibly insensitive and dumb, dude. They see 6 inches in front of their face, just long enough to see when the cock is coming right at them at the last second. Idiots! Why? How can you be so stupid and just racist? And like pretend that you're on the right side of history, but you're just insanely racist doing journalism. Oh no, we're the good guys. Anything we say is fine. Grand Thumb posted a video talking about his observations, which I think did a great job of looking at some of the more glaring issues without pointing the political finger or espousing some kind of insane conspiracy theory.
There's really one thing that's been bothering me about the whole Secret Service response, and that's primarily the level of training and physical fitness that we saw in a lot of the agents there. When I think of the Secret Service, I think of the best of the best. I would think at minimum a local SWAT team level or a large city SWAT team level being that level of shooters, that level of physical fitness. And yet we saw a lot of agents, for example, that one female agent who couldn't even reholster a weapon and who had a muffin top and looked fairly out of shape.
There was obviously a lot of droppings of the ball. My cousin Clint, his father, was a Marine Corps scout sniper, and he did counter sniper stuff a lot. And listening to him talk about it, very obviously the ball was dropped. The ball was very clearly dropped. It makes no sense. The ball was dropped a lot. It needs to be thoroughly investigated, but it doesn't make sense to automatically jump to insane conspiracies like Trump faked it or it was a mind control experiment. Mike talks about how when he thinks of the Secret Service, he thinks of the best of the best. I mean, they're the people who are responsible for protecting the lives of current and past presidents. Very important. I would assume that they would be the absolute best of the best, like Navy SEALs. You'd have a SEAL Team 6 essentially, just at all times to protect the guy in charge, right? Makes sense. And the guy who was in charge and the guy who has a 50% chance of being in charge again. Mike thinks that when it comes to training, fitness, and kit, they'd at least have something similar to what a SWAT team might carry, something that can deal with most situations. And what he noticed was agents with gear that didn't even compare to something that street cops have.
A lack of training on the range. These should all have been trained and figured out. And I was also very surprised at the basic setups of Glocks I saw. So the Secret Service is primarily carrying Glock 47s or Glock 19s, but I saw a lot of Glock 19s that were completely stock, not even with an optic or a light. And this isn't even tricked out. This is just, you know, your most basic city cops now have this.
Handguns with no sights or without weapon lights, and training failures like complete inability to reholster weapons, which is just a, you know, huge red flag that there's no repetition. There's no repetition. What are you doing? What is your job? You just stand there with a gun? No, your job is to stand there with a gun in case it needs to be used, because the stakes are quite high. You know, you're not just like an ornament. You're serving a purpose. I'd say that Grand Thumb's thoughts feel like a more accurate depiction of the events, especially when you see clips like this.
You can hit it like you mean it.
Anyways, guys, thank you for watching this MK Ultra video. Let me know what you thought down below. Join the Gump Club, go to sour.gg, buy some Sour Boys. If you're a member of the Gump Club, you'll get free shipping on any order over $25, which is really, really awesome. We lose money on every single order, but I don't really give a fuck. I'm happy about it, to be honest. I might have to get rid of some of the stuff in there though, so because we are actually losing a lot of money on it, and it is not profitable, and we're almost making enough money to not have to take out more and more credit and take more and more risks. But, you know, what the fuck do I know? I'm a victim of a mind control experiment. Go to sour.gg, buy little guys, buy Sour Boys. Thank you all so much, and thank you to these guys.